In every era, there are figures who rise far beyond what their origins predict. People whose influence seems impossible to explain, whose wealth seems to appear out of nowhere, and whose connections extend into places most of us will never see. Jeffrey Epstein was one of those figures. His name has become inseparable from controversy, scandal, and mystery. But the world tends to focus on the final chapters of his life: the investigations, the court cases, the headlines. What far fewer people understand is the beginning of the story. How did a boy from a modest apartment in Brooklyn ascend with such speed into the world of billionaires, global elites, and international power? Today, we walk through Jeffrey Epstein's entire life: his childhood, his early influences, his rapid ascent into high finance, the shadowy world he later built around himself, and the final day that still fuels debate. And before we begin, a quick note. This channel focuses on serious, carefully researched historical storytelling. No sensationalism, no exaggeration. If you value this type of content, consider subscribing. It helps support deeper, more responsible documentaries like this one. Now, let's begin at the very start. Coney Island. Humble beginnings. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953, in the seaside neighborhood of Coney Island, Brooklyn. In the 1950s, this part of New York was a vibrant but working-class community. Crowded apartment blocks, immigrant families, and the famous amusement park just a short walk away. His parents, Seymour and Pauline Epstein, lived an ordinary life. Seymour worked for New York City's Parks Department, maintaining grounds, clearing debris, fixing equipment. Pauline worked as a school aide, assisting teachers in public classrooms. There was nothing glamorous about the family's lifestyle. No private schools, no weekend trips, no financial comfort. They lived paycheck to paycheck, like millions of other families. But Jeffrey wasn't like most children. His teachers noticed his intelligence early. By age 8, he was already solving math problems meant for teenagers. By middle school, he was helping classmates with geometry and algebra. He wasn't just smart. He learned unusually fast, absorbing concepts in a way that seemed effortless. His social intelligence also appeared early. He was confident, even bold. He could charm adults and influence peers. He seemed to understand people instinctively, what they wanted, how they felt, how to navigate them. This would become a defining trait. Teen years. Confidence with a purpose. At Lafayette High School, Epstein blended into the student population on the surface, but not academically. Teachers consistently reported that he grasped mathematics far beyond his level. He was known to challenge instructors, debate them, even correct them, sometimes respectfully, sometimes bluntly. He wasn't a troublemaker, but he could be confrontational, not out of rebellion, but out of a conviction that he was right. He joined clubs, pursued interests, and built friendships easily. But more importantly, Epstein developed ambition. Those who knew him at the time said he spoke about wanting to go far, though no one knew what far meant. After graduating high school in 1969, he attended Cooper Union. Then later, he studied at New York University. But in a pattern that would later become a signature of his life, Epstein abandoned traditional pathways. He dropped out. No degree, no diploma, no credentials. Yet he was about to enter a world usually reserved for the academically elite. The Dalton School. An unlikely door opens. In 1974, something remarkable happened. Jeffrey Epstein, a college dropout, was hired as a math and physics teacher at the Dalton School. Dalton was not a typical private school. It was one of the most prestigious, competitive, and academically demanding schools in the country. Most of the students came from wealthy families. Many were children of CEOs, bankers, lawyers, and high-ranking professionals. Dalton almost never hired teachers without degrees. The hiring decision puzzled many, but Epstein made an impression. He dressed sharply, carried himself with confidence, and projected intellectual authority. His teaching style was unconventional. He pushed students to think abstractly, to question assumptions, to consider the deeper logic behind equations. Students remembered him as charismatic, sometimes overly intense, occasionally inappropriate in tone, but undeniably intelligent. However, it wasn't the teaching that changed his life, it was the people. At Dalton, Epstein crossed paths with families connected to finance, and one connection would alter everything. Alan Ace Greenberg, a senior executive at Bear Stearns, had a child enrolled at the school. Greenberg noticed Epstein and saw both ability and potential. In 1976, he made a phone call that changed Jeffrey Epstein's trajectory forever. Bear Stearns. A rise that defied logic. Epstein was hired at Bear Stearns as a junior assistant in the trading division. From the moment he stepped onto the trading floor, he was different. He wasn't intimidated. He wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't shy. Instead, he was bold, questioning models, proposing ideas, analyzing risk like someone who had been studying markets for years. Bear Stearns was a battlefield of intellect and aggression. Success required quick decisions, confidence, and the willingness to take risks. Epstein excelled. Within months, he was given more responsibility. Within a few years, he became a limited partner, a position that usually took decades to reach. Co-workers described him as brilliant in mathematics, unnervingly calm under pressure, persuasive, even manipulative at times, able to pitch ideas with absolute certainty, surrounded by influential clients. He learned how the financial elite operated, their fears, their desires, their vulnerabilities. But in 1981, at just 28 years old, Epstein left Bear Stearns. According to some accounts, he was asked to leave after a minor rule violation. According to others, he left on his own terms. Whichever version is true, the result was the same. He stepped into a world with fewer rules and much more freedom. His own firm, wealth without a blueprint. Epstein created a private financial consulting firm. He described it as a wealth management service for billionaires. But from the beginning, details were scarce. He claimed to manage the finances of only the ultra-rich, individuals with hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars. His business filings were minimal. His company had almost no public footprint. Employees were few, sometimes just one or two. Yet his wealth grew dramatically. By the late 1980s, Epstein owned luxury properties most people would never see: a mansion on Manhattan's Upper East Side, homes in Palm Beach, an estate in New Mexico, apartments in Paris, and later, a private island. How did he acquire such wealth? His explanations were vague. Some said he was a financial genius. Others believed he offered services that went far beyond investment advice. Some suspected he possessed information, the kind that makes powerful people very cooperative. Whatever the truth, Epstein became known for being private, selective, deeply connected, and extremely influential. He cultivated relationships with billionaires, politicians, scientists, academics, and royalty. And during the 1990s, shadows began to form around his personal behavior. Whispers, concerns, reports that would eventually grow into investigations. We won't go into explicit details here, but it's important to note that this era laid the groundwork for the criminal charges that would follow in the 2000s and 2010s. The double life. What made Epstein so unusual was not just his wealth, but the contrast between his public and private lives. In public, he was charming, articulate, almost scholarly. He attended high-profile events, hosted intellectual gatherings, and funded scientific research. In private, concerns about his behavior grew steadily. Investigations started to surface. Some individuals distanced themselves quietly, others remained close. Epstein built a world that operated by its own rules, a closed circle, one that few people could enter and even fewer could understand. By the 2000s, law enforcement began to investigate more aggressively. In 2008, he faced charges in Florida and received a controversial plea deal that remains debated to this day. This period marked a turning point. His image cracked. His influence weakened, but did not disappear. His connections remained powerful, and his wealth seemed untouched. The final years. Pressure builds. Throughout the 2000s and 10s, the investigations intensified. Journalists uncovered documents, witnesses came forward, and the public's interest grew. By 2019, the pressure reached a breaking point. On July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on new federal charges. He was denied bail and transferred to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. This facility had held mob bosses, terrorists, spies, and violent criminals. It was known for strict security and for being nearly impossible to escape or manipulate. Epstein's final month inside MCC remains one of the most scrutinized periods in modern legal history. August 10th, 2019. The most controversial day. On the morning of August 10th, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell. The official ruling was suicide. But from the moment the news broke, confusion began. Security cameras malfunctioned. Guards reportedly fell asleep. Required cell checks were missed. Paperwork contained irregularities. Key witnesses gave conflicting statements. In the years since Epstein's death, public discussion hasn't stopped. And outside the official narrative, a number of alternative theories have taken on a life of their own. Some people believe that Epstein didn't die in his cell at all. One of the more persistent theories suggests that he was quietly moved, protected, and is now living abroad, with Israel often mentioned as the place he allegedly fled to. Whether these theories are simply internet folklore or reflect a deeper public distrust is something each viewer must decide for themselves. What do you think? Did Epstein's story truly end in 2019, or is there more to it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.